Welcome back to In the Ring with Termite and Mr. S.
Welcome back.
Mr. S, we got a good one tonight.
We do. I'll usually sometimes do the intros, but you've got a lot of information on this guy, so let's hear it.
Let me say, I was trying to think of something good I could say about him, but yeah, everything I got to say is good about John Duffy. John Duffy, movie producer. He is the one. Him and a guy named Stefan, which we'll be hearing from at another time. They're the ones that's got our movie to the place it is, and Left Behind series. John, tell. I know who you are. Tell the world who you are. Tell them a little bit about you. I want y'all to know this guy because he's a good guy.
All right. Well, if I'm on the show and you can see me now, let me know. But yeah, I'm John Duffy, and my story is I'm from the Bronx, from the South Bronx to Hollywood. I grew up in the South Bronx. Dropped out of school when I was 15 years old and went on a journey that somehow took me to Hollywood. I say God had a bigger plan for my life than I had, that's for sure. So he took me on that journey. And since then, I've done a lot of things in my life. And in the film side, I started out acting and entertainment. That's what brought me to Hollywood. And I went from acting into line producing, which is the hands-on producing and producing. And I've done about 50 films. And years ago, I had the great honor to be introduced to Termite Watkins, and it's been a great journey ever since, and the journey continues with him.
Yeah, John Duffy, you remember what city we were in? What really is what town? What town? Right outside. You were with Dennis Quaid. Wasn't that the first time we met?
Yes, we met. We met in, I think we met in Austin originally at a hotel there, but then we made the movie out in Smithville, Texas.
Smithville, yes.
And that was with Dennis Quaid. It was a horror movie. And you came out, we put on, while we were in the middle of making this movie with Martin Gigi, the director, he threw a concert for the town's Toys for Tots program. And Dennis Quaid's band came in, his band came in. And we put on this benefit to help the small town of Smithville. And it was a great experience. You hung out with us and Dennis. And that's been a while now.
It has been a while. And Donald, being a musician yourself, Dennis Quaid is incredible.
I didn't know he was a musician.
Oh, you know that Great Balls of Fire?
Right.
You ought to see. Did you see the movie?
Yeah, I've seen that.
That was him. That
he
was
really
him.
playing.
He's that good.
That's impressive.
Unbelievable. So, John, it's so good to see you and so good to have you on the show tonight. And, John, tell us real quickly about your podcast and how people can look at it if they want to see it. John goes.
Sure. Absolutely, Termite. So I started the podcast. It's called Live Courageously. And I started it when I was up in Canada, in Calgary. I was doing producing a movie with Kevin Sorbo, who was directing and starring. And it was called Left Behind, The Rise of the Antichrist. And it was during the whole COVID experience. And I woke up at 2 a.m. and I just had this thing going, everybody's living in fear. I need to get out there with a message of courage. And so I got the idea to start this podcast show to invite all the amazing, courageous people that have been put into my life. And I started it with the idea of doing about, 3 or 4 shows. And now I'm up to 92. And I got about another 75 already planned for. So I'm like, this definitely took off way past my thing. But it was. I felt the call in. I felt the call in to inspire people to not live in fear, not let the media let them be afraid, but to tell them to be courageous.
I love it. I just love the courageous part. Mr. S, you get to ask him all the questions about me and him. But right now, I want you to tell everybody you come from the Bronx and you told a little bit. And you didn't have it easy coming up. And tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I grew up in the South Bronx, which at the time when I was growing up there was one of probably the worst neighborhood in New York City, as far as poverty, heroin addiction, gangs, you name it, crime. It was all of that. And I dropped out of school following in my brother's footsteps. I dropped out when I was 15 and went on a path of survival. So that was what I was trying to do, was survive, and started working, and then I went on a bunch of journeys. And I had close calls growing up in the Bronx. I had guns put to my head. I was
Wow.
almost thrown off a bridge once. So I never did I ever at that age in my life expect to ever be in the film industry. It wasn't even a dream that I could have. That wasn't even on my radar that that was possible. But little by little, over time, I went on journeys to all kinds of places. In a lot of ways, I feel like I was a real life version of Forrest Gump in some of the things that I've gotten to experience, you know. So I'm always amazed by the things that I've gotten to do and the people I've met. But that's a little part of it. And then eventually I went to Hollywood. My life came to an end. I also went through a process. I went through a seminar with this guy, Tony Robbins, which flipped my life. And from there, I ended up moving to Hollywood. I had $100 in my pocket. A friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine, died of AIDS 2 weeks before I left for Hollywood. And I restarted in Hollywood and recreated myself. I became a counselor, I acted, and then I moved into producing and line producing feature films.
That's a huge transition. Tell me a little bit more. So, growing up the way you described growing up, obviously not privileged of any sort, surviving. That's
Well,
what you said. Just you're surviving. Did you ever even have moments? I'm thinking of people that are in similar situations today. That's their life. Did you ever even have situations where you dreamt of a future? Like, man, someday this would be nice? Or was it just, what is today? How do I stay alive just today?
well, I always, and I guess I was lucky. I was raised by a widowed mom. My first memory was watching my dad die at the age of 4 in my apartment in the South Bronx, and he
You remember
died
seeing that?
of
Oh, wow.
pneumonia. Yeah, he died of pneumonia, but it was also caused by alcoholism. And I watched him die in the bed, and that was my first memory. And my mother was a widowed mom. Both of them were from Ireland, so they were Irish immigrants and blue collar, working class. And so we lived. My mother took care of me and my brother on 2 checks: a Social Security check and a veterans check from the VA, because my dad fought in the Philippines in World War II. So we didn't have much money. We might have been even the poorest, and we were only like the only white kids in the neighborhood, because the neighborhood changed, and it was a Black and Puerto Rican neighborhood when I was growing up. So that was my family, my crowd growing up in that neighborhood. But I was always kind of, it's funny. I dropped out of high school when I was 15, and I started to read and read, and I was like on a journey to grow. I wanted to change my neighborhood, because I didn't like the fact that people were heroin addicts. I didn't like the fact that so I wanted to be part of making a better world. So I went on that journey to try and make a better world. And in the process, it took me in a lot of different places. And in that, I ended up, doing what I do today.
So you weren't just surviving. That's what I was trying to get at. You had something within you that says, I want to do more than just survive. The fact that you wanted to help your neighborhood, these are things that I'd like to encourage other people that if they find themselves in a very dismal situation, they think their life is just has nowhere left but down or up, however you want to look at it. You still within that situation said, you know what, I'm going to at least make my neighborhood better. Start small, do what you can, and it sounds like that was the beginning of your journey, and now you're ended up in Hollywood.
Yeah, I started organizing with a group in the Bronx. We started organizing against drugs to get people off of heroin and to begin to offer an alternative to drug addiction. So from that age, I became a leader, I say, and I always was a leader from that point on in all the aspects of my life. I always felt like there was a bigger purpose, and that I didn't know what all the purpose was, but I was going to always do the best I could and be a leader and not be a follower. So that was part of what, and I was always learning. Whenever an opportunity came up, I said yes, and I learned how to do it, and I went on to the next step. So it was that, and later I learned that by going through the seminar too, just having an attitude that you're responsible for your life and you always have choices. And no matter what throws at you, you can choose to give up. You can choose to not do anything, or you can choose to be an overcomer and find a way to overcome and succeed. And when you make that choice, it may not happen instantly, but you'll get there, because you're moving in the right direction, because you realize that you got the power within you. You got that greatness in you. You were given those gifts, but you got to put in the work. And so that's what I did. Kept trying to put in the work, and keep growing and learning and doing more and contributing more. So that was kind of my life journey.
And that was your Tony Robbins, you said, kind of helped inspire that next
Yeah,
journey.
he I did a fire walk with him. I was working in the post office at the time as a mail handler on an overnight shift for 5 years. And after I took his seminar, I walked across hot coals. I went back to the post office that night, looked around and said, I'm retiring. I'm out of here. I'm going for my dreams. And I never looked back. I went for my dreams from that moment on. That weekend took me on a journey that hasn't stopped to this day, and it continues.
Wow.
And still on a journey.
Inspiring.
And I get to be on a little bit of a journey with him. It's been an incredible journey for us. We've been a good team, and along with Stefan. And, John, I just thank you for all you've done. And we'll catch people up to kind of in a little bit to where we're at. But we'll do that in just a little bit. Excuse me. So John, you're this young white kid in the Bronx, and you've got it tough. Then all of a sudden, you leave one concrete jungle and you go to another one, Hollywood. I know Hollywood's great, but it's the jungle there. It's tough there. And so tell us, how did you make it?
Well, one was an attitude of I made a decision that I had to go for it, and I had to find a way, because once I decided I was going to make my dreams come true, I knew it was up to me. And I got out to California. Like I said, I had $100 in my pocket, and I started to scramble. Luckily, I had a couple who were friends of mine who put me up and gave me a place until I could get on my own. So that gave me a little bit of a hands up. And then I started to scramble, and I worked all kinds of different jobs. And then I became a counselor in Hollywood with runaway kids. And for 2 years, I started counseling runaway kids. And I was also acting at the time. I performed a one-man play about the death of my girlfriend from AIDS called Goodbye, My Friend. And then one of my co-counselors started directing rap videos. And he asked me, he said, why don't you be my production manager? And I said, what's that? And he told me, and I went, oh, yeah. I said, yeah, that's easy. I can do that. And so next thing I know, I was doing production managing on all these rap videos for the different gangs, the Bloods and the Crips, and you name it. And then I found a way. I got tired of the rap world and the music video world. And I tried to get into a feature film. And the first film that I saw, they were looking for a line producer. And I basically bluffed my way into getting hired as a line producer. And then and then I took a friend who was a line producer to lunch for about 3 hours. I asked him about 100 or 200 questions about what does a line producer do? How does he do it? And I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm ready to go. Let's go.
You can act for that role.
Yeah.
That was your first acting job too.
You can call it that. Yeah, right. Exactly. So, and I made the first film, and it was called My Brother Jack, based on a true story of this Italian guy whose brother died of heroin in New York. And so we made the movie, and that started me on my journey to be a line producer. From that point, I was like, I can do it. If you tell me it's impossible, I'm going to make it possible, and I can do it. And it started me on that journey.
So what is a line producer? I'm completely ignorant on that.
Good question. So if you watch movies, as everybody does, you see all this list of credits at the end, the producers, the executive producers who put up the money, or maybe they bring the talent to it. You got your regular producers who are the ones who maybe control the creativity of it. They might either buy a script or have somebody write a script, and then they kind of run the project all the way through to completion. And then they hire a person like myself, a line producer, who's the hands-on producer. And what I do is I create a schedule for the movie, how we're going to schedule it, how we're going to budget it. And then once it gets financed and they green light it and the money's in the bank, then we go into pre-production. And then I'm in charge of managing everything, hiring the people, supervising it, and making sure that we come in on time and on budget, and making sure that the movie is accomplished and we achieve our goals. So I'm the person who, no matter what happens, I got to come up together with the team with solutions. And so I'm the solution person. And then, we do that. And that started me. And I've done, like I said, tons of movies. Two of the highlights was ones with Kevin Sorbo that we did up in Canada, in Calgary. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that, or you can ask me some questions about that. But, it's just been a journey. And for me, I love it because I've worked blue collar. I worked in factories. I worked in the post office. And as a line producer, even though it's an 18-hour day, a 20-hour day, I say I have not worked a day since I've been in the film industry. I don't work anymore. It's just too much fun making things happen with great people. And I'm just honored and blessed that I get to do it.
I was going to ask a question, but you kind of answered it. I was going to say you've left your way into that role. You get the line producer role. Was there a moment, you have the job, now they've tasked you, assigned you with some things. Did you feel like you were in over your head? Like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? Sounds like you were just in your element.
Well, because I came from, like I said, that experience that gave me the motivation and the belief system. When I did that seminar, it kind of gave me a lot of tools for life. And so one of them was knowing that you can always solve a problem if you go for the solution, right? So just two examples on that first film. Well, I'll just say one example. We needed to shoot in New York, but we didn't have the money to shoot in New York. It was low budget and we didn't have it. So what was the solution? And my brain said, well, if we could shoot 2 days on a back lot of a studio that has a New York set, we could make New York. But we didn't have enough money to do that. So then I was like, okay, how do I solve that problem? And so I started asking all around, and somebody connected me with the guy who ran Paramount Studios back lot, called him up, and I told him about the story, told him how great the movie was. And he said, well, what do you want? And I said, well, 2 days on the back lot, if we could film on the New York set. And he said, okay, how much money do you got? And I said, nothing. And he laughed and he said, that's funny. I said, yeah, I know, right? I said, but it's true. He says, so you're asking me to give you 2 free days on the back lot of Paramount Studios for free? I said, yeah, is that a problem? And he laughed again. And he said, wow. He said, no, it's not a problem. If you can do it on the weekend, I'm going to give you 2 free days. So that was my first movie, but it also gave me that thing was, you can make the impossible happen if you're willing to try, if you're willing to ask, if you're not willing to say it can't happen. And so from that point on, every movie, whenever a problem came up, I said, okay, how do I solve it? And then try and find a way to get that miracle, so to speak, to get us through it.
Incredible.
Donald, Mr. S, I think this would be a good time to tell them about Fred Kunert. Fred Kunert is actually the one that actually connected us. And Fred Kunert was a friend of mine from Houston that moved to Hollywood, and he produced the Buddy Holly story. And I'm saying this right, John?
100%. 100%.
He produced the Buddy Holly story, which you've probably seen. If you haven't, you need to.
I have not seen it.
Oh, it's a good one.
Great movie. Great movie.
And it's funny, I was talking to Fred one time, and it's been 40 years now, 40, 50 years, and he's still getting checks on it, which I think is pretty cool. But Fred Kunert is the one that was first in John's place, but Fred had to pull out for some different reasons. And Fred called me and said, Termite, I got the perfect man. And he said, he's the man. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, I've got to pull out. I've got this problem. And he introduced me to John Duffy. We talked actually by phone. Then we met in person somewhere else later. And but that's how we actually come to know each other. And it's been just wonderful. I love his attitude because, we tell our people all the time that, that you can make your way through it. You can pull out of it. You can always overcome. And he's got that attitude.
Obviously not. Yeah, time after time. It's impressive.
Yeah. And he, he's a fighter. And I love his attitude. And now we're fighting together.
Yes, we are. And we got stories, and I hope to tell a couple of them. I've been in the ring with this guy, Termite, for 3 minutes, but I'll tell you that later. I'm going to hold on. But Fred Kunert introduced me when I met with him and knew him. He told me 2 movies he was working on. The first one was a true story called A Sunday Horse, which was a true story about this equestrian woman who basically was a Christian woman who overcame, this injury and pulled off a miracle. And, so he tells me that movie and I'm like, wow, that's a great true story. Oh man, what can I do to help you? And then he says, well, I got another one. And I'm like, okay, what's the next one? And he says, it's called, They Call Me Termite. And he tells me the story about Termite Watkins. And now I'm like, oh my God, that's even better than the first one. I'm like, what do I do to help you with that one? And he had 2 true life stories of people who made the impossible possible in their life. The woman with A Sunday Horse, and then Termite, what he did in Iraq. And I'd work for free on both of them. I was just, tell me what I can do and I'm there. to me, that was the two most inspiring stories I've been introduced to in my career. And then when Termite went up, Fred kind of passed, pulled back in his career. He gave me a Sunday Horse, and I got it made, and it's on Amazon Prime. You can watch it on there. A great movie, great cast. And now we've been working on this one, which is my favorite movie of all the movies I've worked on in my life, is the movie about Termite. And we're going to work until we make this happen. And that's the next magic that we're going to pull off, the next miracle.
Yes, we are.
Very excited.
I want to say this before we leave the Sunday Horse. If you're out there and you haven't seen it, go get it. John, how can they watch that again?
It's on Amazon Prime. They can watch it on Amazon Prime.
You got to watch this movie. It's a great family
A
story.
Sunday Horse.
A Sunday Horse.
And it's a true story. And once again, it's about a woman who overcame all the odds, pulled off a miracle, and was a miracle. And it's one of those stories that will make you cry at the end, but will inspire you to your greatness and inspire you to your dreams. So it's that kind of movie.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome.
Well, John, at a different date, my goal is to get can we mention it? Who's helping us right now?
I hope so. Yes, sir.
I've already done it.
Can we do it? Because I've already done it.
So we brought the Sailor Brothers involved in this. And John, you want to just kind of update my friends on kind of where we're at on it? I always tell them, but they can hear it from you now.
Well, yeah, sure. And the Sailor Brothers, we had the honor of attending, Termite and myself, this thing called the Gideon Film Festival. And that was down outside of Nashville in the Johnny Cash Ranch, where the Sailor Brothers base camp out of. And so we got to speak, and Termite and myself both spoke about the movie that we're trying to do. And the Sailor Brothers are partnering with us. And, some of the steps leading forward is we're going to do this year in Texas, we're going to do shoot a 10-minute proof of concept video that shows the story of Termite. We're going to use that to move us to the next level. And then the next level will be to put the team together with a script and a director and the talent that we need and the financing that we need to produce the actual feature film. So if anybody watches this, anybody connected to Termite or want to reach out to me, who want to invest, who want to support this dream, because it is a dream story. And we still haven't told the story, but I want to tell us to tell a little bit of what the story is, because every time I've told it, and I've told it about 1,000 times, is that everybody says the same thing. Oh my God, the hairs just stood up on my arm. And I'm like, yeah, right, mine as well. Every time I tell it, they do. So, and this would be a great movie if it wasn't true even. But once you know it's true, you go, no, this is true. This is a true story. And yes, it is.
Well, I'm so honored to have you partnering up with you and getting excited. Mr. S., you got some more questions?
I do. I want to hear a little bit more. We're going to talk more about your movie, but we'll update some more. I want to hear his perspective on it.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more. You said you've worked with Kevin Sorbo and Dennis Quaid. Those are some big time names. What are some of those movies that you've done, and what were some of the challenges there that you had?
Well, every movie has challenges. Each one's different. But like with Dennis Quaid, we did that in Smithville, Texas, and the town. I love the people of Smithville, Texas. Oh God,
incredible.
What a great, what incredible human beings. Had such a great time with them. And that was the first time working with Dennis. And Dennis is such a professional actor that he brought so much. He brought so much to the story, so much to the script with his performance, and it was a pleasure working with him. But like a lot of times in independent movies, you have to solve problems with very little money. So you have to find a way to, just like I did with Paramount Studios, sometimes you got to ask for favors. And, the funny thing is, if you make friends with people and you get along with people, and I love people, so it's easy for me to do that. But when you make friends with people, then people want to help you, because now it's not like it's like friends helping each other.
It becomes personal.
And yeah, it becomes that. It's not a business transaction; it's a friendship transaction, and that's is a better situation to always be in life. So we made that movie with Quaid. We had to shoot it at night. Matter of fact, we would have one night, my buddy was my stunt coordinator, and some crazy guy in Smithville, Texas, I shot at one of the lights. I guess he was a meth addict or something. And my stunt coordinator, he was in the military, he went running towards the fire, just like, you would expect from somebody from the military, right? Then eventually the police arrested the guy who did it. But, you always have crazy stories on that movie. I also drove Dennis Quaid recently on the Reagan movie up at the Reagan Ranch that he played Ronald Reagan. An excellent movie, a great movie to see. And I was his driver for a week because it was during COVID and I wasn't doing anything else. So I drove him up and down every week, every day to the ranch, hung out with all the people, and a lot of the cast and crew were friends of mine. And so I did that with Dennis. And then with Kevin, we did Miracle in East Texas, which if you get a chance, you got to see it. It's a true story about Texas. And it's about the biggest oil find in the history of Texas and the world that changed Texas history and changed the world. And the movie is a comedy, and it's also a movie about how two bad guys, con artists, end up finding their fate. One becomes a pastor, and they save Texas with this oil find. It's a great, fun movie. But working with Kevin Sorbo was such a blast up in Calgary, and the people of Calgary were fantastic. The crew was fantastic, and and then we went on 3 years later to come back and do Left Behind with Kevin again in Calgary. And that was a great experience as well. And there's challenges in all of them. But, I look at it this way. That's what life's about. It's not easy making them when you don't have certain things, but that's just challenges to overcome. And when you embrace that mentality, you just overcome the challenges. It's like, bring it on. I got it. Bring it on. I got it. And you just overcome the challenge.
So speaking of challenges, my first question on that is, you made a movie based in East Texas, but y'all filmed it in Calgary. That's obviously what was the reasoning for that?
Good question, Ms. Das. Well, the reason was money. We didn't have a lot. Matter of fact, we had very little. And what Canada offered us that Texas didn't offer us, unfortunately, was two things. Canada had a currency exchange where $1 million became $1,300,000. So now you got $300,000 extra dollars to make your movie. And then they had a good incentive of another $300,000, 30%. So now your million became $1,600,000. So that gave us the financial ability to make that movie, where going to Texas, we would not have gotten that. So that was the first decision. And then Calgary, they call it Texas North. They have the Calgary
it is like Texas, yeah.
Yes, it's horses, it's oil wells, it's, it has the same, look. But we had the challenges. I got up there. I only had 3 weeks from the minute I arrived. We had 3 weeks to get it all together and start shooting in 3 weeks, which is ridiculously small amount of time. And we had people build us oil rigs in those 3 weeks. They built oil rigs for us. Just all kinds of crazy stuff. We were filming at a couple of Western movie towns. People did everything to help us. I mean, what people did up in Calgary was great because we didn't have a lot financially, but they loved the story. And then when Kevin came in, the people of Calgary saw us. We're coming from Hollywood, and there's like, you look at people from Hollywood, they have a certain thing, and people don't necessarily respect that. But they realized that we treated Kevin and everybody else on our team, treated them like they were our family. We treated them the way we'd want ourselves to be treated. So we created family, and we respected everybody. And, we just created this bond with everybody, and everybody loved working with us, and we love working with them.
Very
so
cool.
It became, even though it's impossible to make a movie for that little money, we did it. We pulled it off.
Yeah, that's cool. He's had some pretty big. You got John Duffy, Left Behind. That's pretty big. And then, of course, you got the Reagan stuff. That's pretty big.
We're reading your wall behind you there.
But, man, look at that book in that top corner. Man, that's a big book.
Yeah.
Right. There it is. I see it. I know that
book.
Thank you for having my book on your shelf.
In that moment, I have to do this.
There you go. Look at that.
You're right.
Definitely a marketing guy.
We're right.
I love it. I love it. And Cindy's probably just dying laughing. She's out there watching this. You might better say hi to her. You're going to be in trouble.
Hey, Termite.
Oh, yes.
Cindy said, Hey, John, best producer ever. You've been courageous just hanging out with Termite. We love you.
Well, I would add, Cindy is even more courageous than me or Termite, because just having me drive with her, she said that was the scariest
Oh, Lord have
experience.
mercy. I agree with that.
Uh-oh.
Anytime he comes into town, I'll drive. Oh, shoot. Well, well, it's always just so good to see you. You know, I just love the way you've got your bookshelf. But Gary Sinise, I like Gary, and you know him, don't you?
Yeah, I met him years ago. He started a group in the film industry, for a lot of us to kind of people who supported veterans, who were patriotic. He formed an organization around that, and a lot of us kind of coalesced and came together around that.
Right.
And then he went on to do so many, things like his all of his support, the Gary Sinise Foundation for veterans. He just done so much work for veterans, and then of course he has his music group that goes around performing for veterans all around the world. So he's just, I would say he's probably one of the best role models in Hollywood for a great human being who's about service to others and not themselves. And, if you want to model somebody who's really about making a difference in life and caring about others, Gary Sinise would be the person you want to model, I would say.
Yeah, that's good. And when you say Gary Sinise, it reminds me of seeing the book Termite up there, which was written by Susie Chinnis. She loves Gary Sinise. And so every time I think of Gary Sinise, I always have these good memories of things that she used to say about Gary Sinise. So John, what is next on your agenda? What,
How long do
What
I
are your
have?
goals? How long do you need?
How long do I have? Well, I'm going to hold off the best for last, if that's okay. And the best being, we're going to talk about your film a little bit more as to close it out, of course, because that's the best, right?
I love it.
But
I love it. But tell
I
us
want to
about
keep.
you. I get so fascinated. Every time I see you or talk to you, you're on a different set. You're always with, on big stuff. You're with movie stars and all that kind of stuff. It sounds like a pretty cool life.
You know, what's really cool about it is it isn't the celebrities or the movie stars.
Right.
It's the people who make it happen. That's what's
That's
really
right.
cool about me. I mean, because I came from the street. I came from the bottom, and what I respect is my background, and I just think the hardworking people, whether it's the crew members, the people who put in the work to make it happen in every department, transpo, the grips, the electric, the people on every level that make this happen. That's the family, that's the team, and that's who I love the most because that's who I spend most of my time with. So that's kind of what I like about it. And for me, each time, like I say, it's an adventure because we have a big dream together. We're trying to make the film, and we have obstacles to overcome. So that's a challenge for me to be able to be part of. And I don't know all the answers as much as I've done it. Every time there's problems that come up, but I know other people have the answers if I don't, and we work together as a team and we solve the problems. It ain't like I know everything because I don't. Um, but it's knowing that we will always solve the problems and we'll make it happen. And if, the best part of it is, I look at it and I see people sometimes complaining about, in the industry about this is hard, that's hard. And I go, I work, like I said, I worked in factories. I worked hard jobs. I drove a cab. I drove a Lyft. I've done some stuff. And I know whenever I walk around and I see people in a restaurant working hard, I go, that's hard work. These are people who are really humping it. And how lucky are we to be in an industry like this? I never expected to be. I expected to be working in a factory all my life. But so I don't feel like I work, and I just say God definitely blessed us and blessed me, and so I'm glad to have that blessing. And every day I'm grateful. I get up every day and I write down 5, 10 things I'm grateful for. And I mean, I got to stop there because I could go on all day because there's just so much to be grateful for, even when things are hard. Because it ain't like my life has been easy all the time. Because I've gone up and down, with issues and financial and all that stuff. But that's okay. That's part of life. You just appreciate the blessings you have and take on the challenges and say, let's go.
And I think the one thing about life that it's worth noting is we get to pick our hard. And so some of the things that you have that are challenges, you chose to put yourself in that situation, but then it's now you have to overcome it and then you get to move forward. Some people just kind of stay where they're at, and that's choosing a certain hard also. So you kind of get to pick your hard. It's going to be hard either way. Which one do you want?
Yeah, and just people knowing that, a lot of times people think they don't have a choice. Like, life has given you a deck of cards, but it ain't about what life has given you, because some people are born rich, some people are born poor. I was born poor, but what's the good in it, and what's the what can you turn that into? The card deck of cards, a hand of cards you got, it's on you to play your cards the best, to get the best out of it, and that's a choice. And we all have choices, and we can make good choices or bad choices. And I haven't always made perfect choices. I've made bad choices at times, but then I make better choices, and I learn from that and go, okay, that was a bad choice, that was wrong, I shouldn't have done that. And then you overcome and you go to the next level to say, what can I do better? How can I do more? And you just keep challenging yourself to be the best you can be, on every level, every day.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
We were talking about Dennis Quaid a while ago, and because of John, I got to meet Dennis Quaid and spend time with him and become friends with him, get his phone number, call back and forth. And one of the finest guys that I've ever met in this industry, and it's not like I've met a bunch of them, but I have met a lot of people in this industry, and just a great person, just a jewel of a person, one of the kindest, sweetest people. And I got to tell this little story. So they were filming in, I forgot where he's Smithville. And when I got to meet Dennis and spend some time with him, he was going to give me 5 minutes to sell him on my story. And we were at the table, and my time to talk with him, he says, 5 minutes, Termite. So I get up there and I start talking and telling him the story, and at 5 minutes, I stood up, and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "You gave me 5 minutes. I want to honor." He goes, No. Sit back down. Sit back down." And 45 minutes later, I told him, I said, "Dennis, I got to go. I got to catch an airplane." And I was going somewhere. But anyway, that was sweet memories. So do we have anybody else out there that's reaching out to us talking tonight?
So we don't have anybody talking, but we've got people watching. So if you guys have any questions, make sure you put them down in the comments.
I want to hear more about the next steps. So obviously, Termite's movie is kind of one of your highlights. What are some of the other things you're working on? What are goals you have for yourself? You've come so far. Obviously, you're not done yet.
Oh, no. I always say, I don't know who I borrowed this from because it wasn't an original, but, I say, when I wake up and there's 6 feet of dirt above me, that's when I retire. So I got a lot of time. I'm hoping that doesn't happen anytime in the far future. But, I'm doing in the film world, I have a lot of films. The film that we met on in Texas, Beneath the Darkness with Dennis Quaid, the director of that, Martin Gigi, who's a very talented director of music.
Talented.
Yeah, music producer. Matter of fact, he put on when Houston had that hurricane back in the day. He put on a concert to raise funds for Houston. He brought in all the former presidents came to it. All the top artists came, and he led that. So incredible, talented dude. So he has about 3 or 4 films that he wants me to work with him on in the future. So that's happening. I also wrote a screenplay called Goodbye, My Friend, that's based on my girlfriend who died of AIDS. And it's based on that true story. And so I'm looking at getting that finished this year and making that into a movie next year. So that's on my agenda. I'm still doing my podcast shows. Like I said, I've done 92 and I got a lot more to do. I also put out a weekly newsletter called Courage. And what else? I'm also a professor at UCLA teaching online class. I'm teaching one right now for their sister university in Madrid, Spain. So I've been doing this semester with these young students from Spain. And then what else? And I belong to this group called Mindatorium, which is a film group, and they're online. It's kind of like a Netflix for positive, motivational, transformational content. So I'm part of that and may do some projects with them. And what else? And then I have a group of people who are trying to put together some faith-based films with some really good stories, including one in Brazil, and more, man. And I'm
Amazing.
like, it just doesn't, it just keeps getting thrown at me, and I'm like, oh boy,
Bring it.
how lucky am I? How lucky am I to have all these things? And so, like I said, it's just great times. And then of course there's, and that I want to tell that story in a moment, but that is like the highlight that we're going to spend, because we've been together for many years trying to do this film.
Yeah.
I did go down in one of the things. I actually got into the boxing ring with Termite for 3 minutes. He knocked me out. Well, we, we have fun in the boxing ring. I was a lot heavier then, so I've dropped about 40 pounds. I work out every day, so I'm looking for a rematch
You're
with
looking for a
Is
Termite.
that a
rematch.
challenge? Is that a
Yes.
challenge I hear?
That's a challenge, man.
Rematch.
I'm looking for a rematch at Fighter Nation in Houston, Texas. So look forward to that one, people. But that's a little bit of some of the journey we've been on, and every moment that I've spent with Termite and Cindy, and I've spent a lot. I just feel blessed. I mean, they're family, and I'm just that's one of the biggest blessings in my life.
Man, a lot of stuff going on. I got a question. I've always wondered, I don't want to paint you into a corner, but the movies that I see, you have a different perspective. I'm just a consumer. I'll see some movies, they do a lot of remakes. And here you are, you're telling a lot about these original. Can you talk a little bit about the business? They seem to be inclined to kind of use the same story. It's obviously about money, but you're bringing us some really cool stories that aren't always big money makers, but they sound like they're fascinating. And you kind of get a pull between, I guess, the
Well,
passion and the business of what can make money and what is a really good story. How do you juggle all that?
Well, everybody has a different path. Everybody's in the industry for different reasons. Obviously, movie studios are in the business of making money. That's their primary business. Yeah, they may like the content they make. It isn't like they're not creative. But at the end of the day, it's financial that they're aiming for primarily, with some exceptions. In the independent film world that I never lived in the studio world. I never made it to that, and I'm okay with that. Um, I've always loved, whenever possible, the stories that inspired me were the true stories, or ones that could have been true stories. Like when I was young, the Rocky story. That was a story that
Right.
inspired me because I loved that. Here was somebody real from the streets who was able to overcome obstacles and be a champ. And that possibility is something I think, especially people who start on the bottom, blue collar folks, great to have that inspiration to know, we can do more, we can be more. And so that always inspired me. So I love the true stories. I love any movie that's about that. And the industry is going through a lot of changes right now. I mean, the studios are losing a lot of money. A
Oh,
lot of
wow.
the content they're making are not appealing to the average folks in America. And so they're losing tons of money, just in the
I
last
wasn't
week.
aware of that.
Yeah, like Snow White came out and it
I heard
bombed
about the
financially.
Snow White. I don't really understand what happened there.
It was a big bomb on a lot of levels. It was just the original Snow White was a better story than this remake. They tried to make it more politically correct based on their political views, and nobody really cared to see that. That wasn't the Snow White they wanted. And then there was a lot of politics involved that people did rejected. So here's a movie that they spent 145 million plus to make it, and they lost money. But
Wow.
at the same time, you had other movies come out, small movies who did, like number 3 at the box office this week was The Chosen. And, so you had a faith-based movie that did really well. And then you have new studios like Angel Studios, which has made a series of distribution films that they've distributed, including Sound of Freedom, which was about sex trafficking and rescuing children from sex traffickers. And then they made a bunch of other movies as well that they distributed. They didn't make them, they distributed them. And they have a whole Bonhoeffer. They had another one that I just saw called Rule Breakers, about these young girls during the Afghanistan war who built robotics and won a whole robotic competition
Wow.
during the Afghanistan war, and then the Taliban killed one of the girl's fathers. A true story. So they're making those kind of movies. That's what I love. That's what
It's your
I want to be
passion.
part of. I mean, I want to be part of movies that are, you can say, family, faith, and freedom. That might be the three Fs, and no negative Fs there. Just, those are the kind of movies that I think people want, and when we were kids, we loved movies that inspired us. And I
Right.
want to be part of movies that inspire people to live a better life and make a contribution and still be entertained and love the movie.
I love it. It's clearly your purpose. You're definitely a purpose-driven man.
Yeah, it's as I grown. When I first came into the industry, it was survival because I had to take whatever came my way because I needed money, and I did all kinds of things, horror movies, but I rejected some. I was given a couple of situations where I had needed the money really bad, but the people who were involved, when I realized who was involved, I said, no, I'll pass, because it was like the money was important and I needed it, but my principles were more important, and I stuck with my principles and I stepped away.
Wow. It's a big decision.
Well, we're down to our last few
Yeah,
minutes.
well, I guess down to the end, I want to hear more about, we've talked about some of the things you've done. Obviously, the movie with Termite is something that definitely fits your purpose, bringing that story out. What are some of the things that are, I guess we've had a few updates, but
Yep.
what's the
Well,
latest?
I'm gonna let everybody hear it from him. I'm not even
Sure.
gonna say a word.
All right.
You know, and I want everybody who's listen, Cindy probably gets this too. Termite is not saying a word. That is his energy when we were at that film festival, Indian Film Festival. Man, the crowd went crazy because he just took over, and his passion and his energy just kind of it was like everybody in the
It's
room were like,
infectious.
believe it. It was infectious, 100% infectious. So for Termite to say he's stepping back, man, that's an amazing moment here, people. um, but what it is when I heard the story, of here was Termite, his boxing story, his journey from being a poor kid and boxing, and the records that he broke, and then him making a thing to not go to the Olympics because he stood on principle, and then he ends up fighting in this the last hurrah with Muhammad Ali in a dual card fight against Saul Mamby, and losing a 15-round contested decision against the champ. And and there was people there. Frank Stallone was there, and he came up and spoke with Termite. And Mike Tyson said that Termite should have won the fight, and that was the boxing world. And then Termite's life kind of crashed for a little bit, and he made some bad choices, and then he turned it around with his childhood friend, the pastor, and then all of a sudden Iraq wars happen, and he gets this opportunity, and he prays on it, and he goes, I need to serve, I need to make a difference. And then he tells his wife, God's calling me to a mission, and like, God ain't talking to you, don't go to Iraq. What a crazy idea, go to Iraq, but not to go to Iraq for the big, to kill bugs on a military base. Man, are you kidding me? You want to go there to kill bugs? Because his dad was a pest exterminator, right? So now he takes on this mission, and he goes into the middle and puts his life in danger to help serve the cause of what America was doing, and trying to help the people of Iraq. He gets over there, gets into a beef with a colonel from Texas, of course, and then they work out the beef, and they find out about everything about boxing. And this is, then they come to the provisional authority, and they say, hey, Termite, what are the odds you can take an Iraqi boxing team to the Olympics in 10 months? And he's like, are you crazy? The odds are 1,000,000 to 1. And they're like, great, we don't need the 1,000,000, we just need the 1. And now is given this mission. And at this point, as you're going through the story, when I tell everybody, they're like, this ain't real, is it?
Yeah,
right?
what's
This
next?
isn't a true
What's next?
True story. What's next? So he says, yeah. So now he has 10 months. And in 10 months, he has to train these Iraqi kids. He has to get them qualified for the Olympics, means going to all these different tournaments in Pakistan and other countries to get them qualified for the Olympics, and then not get killed by Al Qaeda in the middle of this brutal, horrible time in Iraq during the war. And then he pulls off the impossible, and he takes Iraq to the 2004 Olympics in Athens, Greece. I'm going, if this was fiction, you'd be like, nah, come on now. I ain't buying that. and yet he pulls all it off, and it's just this incredible story, and also, you know, the passion that he had for the Iraqi people and the love they had for him. I mean, there's just so many elements of this story about, here's this Christian dude from Houston, Texas, impacting these Muslim kids in Iraq and giving them their Olympic dreams. I mean, wow, you know, it's a movie that has to be made. It's a movie that will inspire people. It's a movie that will tell people that there's much bigger in your life if you go for it. And Termite, you know, and then there's all kinds of, and you have to see it in the movie. But that's why this movie has to be made, and that's why we've been working for so many years. And now we're, you know, coming close to putting the pieces together. We're going to shoot this proof of concept in Texas. But anybody who wants to reach out to Termite, reach out to me at my email. And you know, if you want to get involved, support us, you know, give us a sponsorship, give us money, help us do the development, help us get this movie made, because it's going to inspire the world. And that's I think I kind of summed it up. Did I do all right, Termite?
I think you did good. Matter of fact, I think you tell it better than I do.
Definitely got the energy behind it, and knowing how you have the skill of the movie side. Obviously, there's the energy of the story, but how do you capture that energy and how do you convey it on screen? That fascinates me. You know, I've heard Termite tell his story so many times, and it's inspiring to hear it. How do you make that into a movie that conveys that energy? And that's where the skill comes in. So I'm excited to see how it all comes together.
Yeah, and that comes from the, you know, the script, then the director, and then the actors, and those three elements: getting a great script, getting a great director who, you know, really knows how to tell this story, because it's a couple of things. It's a boxing movie, but it's more than a boxing movie. It's a war movie, but it's more than a war movie. You know, it's an inspirational movie, but it has all those elements: boxing, war, inspiration, faith. It has all those pieces together, and you want all those elements, and you want to move people emotionally, because that's what great movies do.
Right.
You come in and you emotionally, at the end, you're like, man, you know, you walk out of there telling your friends about this movie, and that's the movie we want to make. And the story is enough to tell that movie, because you know, it's a great story. Just trying to capture, the problem is it's so big, it's like trying to keep
too
it
much. How do you condense it?
That'll be the challenge. But, you know, there'll be a bunch of challenges for us. But, you know, I think we got a great team of people, and, you know, it just comes down to making the impossible possible. And hey, we can do that.
You know, our story is about, our theme is about overcoming. And we've overcome a lot in this movie to stay together. And we are a great team, and we're going to stay together. And John, thank you so much for coming on here. And Mr. S., is there anything else you want to ask?
I'd say as we wrap it up, what would you leave in terms of advice for anybody who's watching this and finds your story, all these different stories, inspiring, and maybe they feel stuck in their own life? What words of encouragement or advice might you have for someone out there that kind of create their own story like you've described yours?
Well, I always say, you know, we're the writer, director, actor of our life stories. And if you want to have a better story, then live a better story. So no matter where you are, there's you can take steps. You know, you don't. I work out 7 days a week in the gym. I didn't always work out 7 days a week, but you don't have to work out 7 days a week. But if you need to change your life as health wise, then go work out once, and then go work out twice. Start taking those small steps, set goals, start dreaming again, have big dreams as to what you can do, you know, in your life, and then start taking action. Because at the end of the day, you need to dream, but then you got to take the action, because the dream without the action will take you nowhere. And then you want to set a plan and start to plan little by little. How do you get there for those things in your life? Because that's how we get from where we are to be something bigger. And they don't have to be, we all got different lives. Your dream may be smaller. You may want to do something where you go out and help some people in your community. Go do it. Take some action. Get involved, you know, volunteer, support other people. Whatever that dream is, you can accomplish it if you believe hard enough. You'll do it if you take action. And each time, if you make a mistake or you hit a wall, that's fine. Solve that mistake, get around that wall, climb over it, go around it, do whatever it takes, and keep moving. Don't stop, because You know, we all been given different gifts, and we're all here to serve a purpose and take your gifts to make a contribution for your family, your community, your country, and the world. And you can do it. Everybody can do it. I'm no different than anybody else. I always say I'm a poor kid from the South Bronx, you know, so if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Thanks for that, John. And I was thinking, as you're saying this, what I wish I had that prop, you know, the action. You know, here you are, the director, you're directing someone else's life, dream, and then take action, and then just move.
Right.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, John.
Mr. S,
Hey,
I
thank
told
you,
you
Paul.
that he'd be fantastic, and John, you were incredible as you always are.
Did not disappoint. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We will post all the different links to your podcast and the other things that you're involved in at the bottom of this, and we hope to have another follow-up, kind of follow up on some of these things.
I would love it. And then, you know, we're going to be coming to Texas to do this. So we'll have to do a live in
That'd be great.
studio.
Yep, bring in the studio.
That'd be great.
And then maybe we'll raise some money for charity by me getting in the ring with Termite
For the rematch.
Run around the ring the whole time, but hey, I can run faster than him.
Hey, it's a strategy. It's a strategy.
So our time is running out, and we always end our show with a certain way, and we're gonna
We
still
do.
do
So
it.
life is tough, comes at you hard. So we like to tell everybody, put their guard up. So he's looking at the camera.
John, you got to
our
get
guard
your
up.
guard up. Oh, look at him. He's a natural.
He's ready.
All right, everybody keep your guard up.